Hello everyone, my name is Florin and I work at JetBrains as a developer advocate. Thank you for having me here today. We will talk about GoLand, our Go-based IDE, and learn how to use it to the maximum using some of the tips and tricks that I'm gonna show you. These hopefully will improve your productivity, but if you're just getting started with, we'll show you the capabilities that the IDE has. Without further comments, let's jump into the editor. Here you can see the default window layout of GoLand, and you may be saying, oh, well, I like it, but I would like something a bit more focused on my code. How can we achieve that? We can invoke the Search Everywhere feature, which is highlighted here as well, using double shift, and then say distraction-free mode, or even better, Zen mode. The Zen mode will put the IDE in full screen and maximize the editor area so that we can type our source code and focus only on that without any other distractions. You might be saying, okay, so how do I now get back to my files? And this is where the project view shortcut shown here will allow you to go back to the file view and allow you to navigate back and forth for any files that you may have. Throughout the presentation, you'll be seeing information such as this one here, which shows you the name of the action as well as the shortcuts for different operating systems. The default one will be for Windows and Linux, as I am using Windows, but you'll also see the Mac shortcut. Okay, cool. So we've seen how we get back to our files. Let's navigate to the first tip that we have. I'm gonna use a feature called the navigation bar to jump straight into the first completion tip that we have. And don't worry if you did not catch how I invoked that, because I'm gonna show it to you throughout the presentation. First tip in completion, let's start with something easy. Let's say that we want to import the FMT package and then use the printline function. How we can do that is by simply starting to type printline here and selecting it from the menu. Pretty easy, right? The FMT part was imported automatically and we also have everything that is needed correctly now. Let's move on to something a bit more advanced. Normally, when you invoke completion, you would be able to see a screen list like this, full of possible matches and so on and so forth. But if you want to narrow down to the exact matches, then you can invoke the smart type completion, and you will have a list that's narrowed down to the exact types. In this case, I would like to use the func part here, which is actually a closure, and finish completing my code here. One special type of completion that we have in the IDE is the postfix completion. What postfix completions are, basically, is templates of code that we can apply to the code that we just typed. For example, I'm gonna type dot and then select var from the list, and this will allow me to get the values returned by a function into variables. Similarly, if I were to type error dot, let's say return error, I'd be able to complete my error handling and return the error. In this case, main doesn't return an error, so you can imagine the error being returned. Moving forward, similar to the postfix completion, we have something called method-like completion. What the method-like completion is the ability of the IDE to use completion in a special way so that you can match all the functions of packages that have the first argument of the type corresponding to the type of the expression on the left side of the dot. If this sounds a bit tricky, let's see it in action. So I'm going to invoke method completion using control space. And now I can see a list of all possible matches that accept the first parameter as a string. So toTitle is here, and this is how it looks like now. This works great for discovering functions in libraries that you just imported that accept custom types. Another type of completion that we have is the live templates. Live templates are similar to postfix completion templates in the sense that they use code to enrich your existing code base, but this applies before you type the expression rather than after typing it. For example, I want to connect to a database and I don't remember always the correct format for the connection string. So I created a live template called dbds, and when invoking that, I see it here already in action, and I can change any parameters that I may want. The IDE itself also has live templates built in, so that you can, for example, say if value is not nil, and you get the error automatically added as a first match, because likely that's what you want to do. Let's say that we want to return error as well here. I just need to type comma here. A special format for the live template is similar to what GoReturns does, meaning that if you type return, you can then select return and the 0 values. And you can say something like fmt error my error. Creating it, right? So, moving forward with our tips, we get into the partial match completion. And this works throughout any completion items that we have. And what it does is it allows you to write something as complex as read-write closer into something as simple as read-write closer. See what I did there? I just needed to type a few letters from the words to get all the word completed and imported properly. And since we're in the completion space, let's say that here I change my mind and I want to say print line. Well, that's not exactly great, right? Because I still have to delete the printf and so on and so forth. So if I were to use the tab key instead of enter, I wouldn't need to do that. Because the IDE has an understanding of our source code, type assertions can become easier because the IDE can suggest exactly the types that match a certain interface. In this case, my type does match the IO reader interface as it implements it. And finally, from the completion list of tips, this is something that I like. Naming is hard in general, right? So what if the IDE could add the names for you? Something like response writer, and you see the partial match completion in action already, but you also get to see the W added as a parameter name. And this works with request as well, and there we added the R value. This works for other types as well. So for example, if I were to type request but select the RPC one, the parameter would be named automatically. Cool, this is the last tip that we had. Let's move to the editing tips. What we'll see now is the cyclic expand word completion, which allows you to reference words. So not just symbols, not just source code, words. Those words could be something like convert to string, so symbol, or it could be something as convert to int, conditional output, or even connect, which is not here, right? So this is pretty cool, and if you want to quickly complete something, it works in strings, as I've shown you, and the regular completion as well. Let's say that we know that this is a function that accepts parameters, mainly because there's an error there, right? So if we invoke the parameters information, we get to see the types of parameters and their names and so on. But this also works for structure initialization. So you can see here that I have a few fields. What you can also see is that we can fill all the fields recursively. And we can also invoke the parameter information in substructures as well, maintaining the lexical order. So here we see that substruct is part of that, we see field 2 is highlighted and so on. One of the regular things that we do in Go is to write JSON, or better said, write APIs that return JSON. So when we ever want to write tests, we likely will need to start doing something like this, then escape, and then, well, this is not the correct escape, this is the correct one, and so on, right? And this can become bothersome. You'll say, wait, Florin, there's a better way. You can use row strings, right? So I can do that, and you don't need to do this. And you're able to say, well, name here. Yeah, that's all good, but I have an error here. I can press Alt-Enter to bring up the context menu, say inject language or reference, JSON, and have JSON inserted as a language in my string. Not only that, but now inspections work. So if I do edit JSON fragment, I can see that this is where the error is, right? Fix it, and even format this so that I can better read it. And when I'm done, I can just exit from here. Furthermore, let's say that we have something that is more complex, like the Go templates. Now, for Go templates, we can also use the injection feature. And not only for them, but in general for injections, we can use the comment of language equals and the name of the language to mark that that string contains a certain language, right? But for Go templates, we can go one step above this, and well, we can have completion enabled here. Completion works because of a little trick that I did earlier, and that is invoking the edit Go template fragment here. And you see this suspicious line which may have come from nowhere, right? But it actually went from here. I did this, said specify dot type, and then selected the type that I know that is rendered by the template. So that's how we get completion to work there. Let's say that now we need to generate the message structure. I can use highlight next error, so jump quickly around errors by their severity, and say, okay, create the message type. See, it was a lot faster to use F2 than doing what I just did now. And if you don't believe me, let's create this one and jump F2 directly. And I could use the shortcut highlighted in the pop-up to say create that field. Furthermore, I can use the column selection mode here, and I can say, okay, JSON, and have the structure have tags now. All right. So I have added structure tags quite quickly and easily. Let's move on with our tips. We are about halfway through our editing tips, and this is something related to selection. Now, until now, I didn't really need to use mouse, right? But if I would say, hey, Florin, select me the contents of add to field method, I would have to place my hand on the mouse and be like, okay, now I think it's all selected. Or I could be anywhere in this. I could say, okay, I'm now here, expand me the selection, and now I have selected everything inside it. I can continue further, or I can shrink down the selection as I need it. And speaking of selections, what if I want to select a field here? Well, I can do something like this. Add selection for next occurrence. Now, I know it would be tempting to use the rename thing from here and just start typing another field name, but please don't do that. There's a rename refactoring, which I'm going to show you in just a bit. Our second to last editing tip here has to do with comments. Now, we value comments, right? And we want people to write comments for us because we don't want to write comments ourselves. So let's use the ID to invoke the context action, add a comment, and give ourselves a little boost in creating a comment, and then say something method belongs to, and invoke completion here so that we can reference the demo type. So creating comment becomes easier, and hopefully we'll get into the habit of creating comments. And finally, let's say that we have a long function call here, right? It has a bunch of parameters, and we can use the IDE to say put arguments on a separate line, and that will reformat the file, or specifically that call, to say, okay, I have one argument on each line, and it's much easier to read, right? And similarly, if I go back to settings and I go under editor code style go, in the wrapping and braces section, I can say for all function calls, either wrap them if they are too long, and I can configure the length for that, or chop them down and make them one on each row. And that can happen as I am typing or not, or always wrap. And similarly, I can do this for composite literals, function parameters. So function parameters can be now written easier, or any other kind of grouping I need. This ends our editing tips. Let's skip over a few and jump to navigation because we will be running out of time soon. So let's go into the FMT format package to open the format go file. One way to do this is to invoke the navigate file, which will automatically take the selection for us and navigate to format.go. It's great, now we've read the file and so on. So how do we get back? Well, we can get back using the switcher, and I kept it on the screen a bit longer than normal, but normally it would look something like this. So you don't even have to see it, you press the shortcut and that's it. Pretty neat, right? Speaking of neat things, if you want to have yourself a bit more time, rather than using the switcher, you can use the recent files. And one cool thing about the recent files is that it can show you only the recent changed ones. If you've been reading a lot of code, but writing just in a few places, this feature can help you out. And let's go back to format. Say, I'm in format now, but like another way to go back into my code is the recent locations. What this does is similar to recent files, but it also shows me snippets of where my cursor was before leaving that file. That means that I can easily see where I was, and I can also use something to filter things. So for example, I can use navigate here. And I just started typing and the IDE filtered all the navigate places. Pretty neat, right? Let's move to our second navigation tip, which somehow involves the same FMT format file. Let's see what we need to do there. Say, does anyone knows the structure of this package or this file? Let's start with the file. I can invoke the file structure pop-up, and I will see a pop-up containing all the elements defined in this file. I can also filter by them, so I can say something like clear flags and jump to that. Or I can invoke this and I can say, okay, Control F12 once again, and show me the package structure, so navigate throughout the package and so on. Okay, this is cool enough. Where do I see this file in my package path, or better said, in my directory structure? Well, I can invoke the select in feature, and I can say select this in project view. And this is gonna show this in the Go SDK. Okay, let's close this for now because we don't need that, and jump back to our tip. Our third navigation tip is about type hierarchy and call hierarchy. Type hierarchy allows you to view all the types, for example, that are implementing an interface. In this case, the IO reader interface. And I can see my type here implements it. Now, I can also say, okay, let's close this and show the call hierarchy. which is the places where the IO reader read method are being called for, right? And let's say, I don't know, let's take a function from here, test, cancel, request, and so on. I can further drill down or decoder fill, and then I can jump into this. Now, if I'm not particularly sure of what I'm looking for, I can invoke the quick definition to see where this is. And let me move this a bit on the screen. And this allows me to see the definition of the element that I'm selecting, right? I can also invoke the quick documentation and see the documentation of that element. And this works the same for any kind of symbol that is present inside the IDE, for example, completion window. Our final tip in the navigation section has to do with comments again. So I've shown you how to write comments, but GoLand 2020.2 adds a new feature to navigate from inside a comment to a symbol definition. And you can also get documentation, for example, if you hover it, so you don't have to necessarily do that. In this particular case, it's not that useful, to be honest, but if I hover the printf statement, well, a lot more useful, right? So using the ability to get completion for comments, as well as have references from comments to the actual elements, is a great way to enhance your comment reading abilities. We are done with the navigation section. Let's go on to the refactoring. Let's implement an interface quickly. We can invoke the generate menu, implement methods. We can select creating a type because we don't have one. Let's say we want to implement IO read writer closer interface. And that's it. I just implemented IO read writer closer interface. It also works on existing types, and it can add missing methods to existing types as well. Moving forward, let's do one of my favorite refactorings, and that is the change signature. Say I change my mind with the add numbers. I can invoke refactor this, change signature, and move parameters around. And perhaps add an error parameter, because that is something that is pretty common in Go. And you'll see we have completion there as well. And I did a refactor for that. Now, I also think this should be in a different package. So I'm going to move to this one, to a new package. And let's call it add. I like a better name for that. Refactor. And okay, what is going on here? Well, it tells me that add numbers cannot be referenced from main because it's not exported, right? So let's export this, try again, and that's it. And speaking of the rename feature earlier, well, you can do the rename when you do the change signature, or you can simply invoke rename and let's say add numbers with a Z, because why not? I've shown you how to create a type and implement an interface, but what if we want to create an interface from an existing type, like demo here, I guess we'll name it. Well, let's place the cursor on a type definition. Let's invoke the refactor menu again and say extract interface. From there, let's give the name demo, right? Select which methods we want to be part of the interface, which file we want to have, so for example main, and that's it. We now have a new interface created out of our existing type. This is great if you want to create interfaces from existing types, in my opinion. Lastly, let's take this message and extract it into a constant because, well, it's similar, right? The IDE will ask you, do you want to replace all the places? Yes, I want. Call it a message. Everything that I've shown you so far can be undone using the undo feature. But what if many things pass between when we did our refactoring and when we want to undo it? Well, for constants or variables, it's simple. We can say inline. And that is it. And on a final stretch, Here, let's go with the run, test, and debug features. One thing that you usually do when you debug is that you put print statements so that, well, you print statement and you know what happens in your code. But you can do better if you invoke the breakpoint feature and then you say, okay, I want to edit the breakpoint and place a condition. Like, I don't know, error not nil. The breakpoint will suspend. So let's run this in the debugger quickly and see what happens. I just had a breakpoint here, so I don't need to litter my code with FMT print statements that are temporary and then remove them or put them under flags and so on. I can let the IDE do its job. Moving forward with our tips and tricks, let's go to the second tip from the test debug run section. And here is a file where we want to generate some tests. So let's generate some tests. How do we do that? Well, we invoke the generate menu again, and we say, generate me a test for this function. Now, this was generated, and let's actually add the test here. So let's say something like this. Let's give it a name like 1. I know all the fields should be. I could use the arguments here. And I want to add a value of 1. And finally, I think I want 3. So when I run this using the coverage runner, for each test, I can see the coverage and percentage and so on. Right? And I can also say, okay, toggle the auto test because clearly I have something wrong. Let's set the delay of 1 second. By default, it's 3, but 1 second is good enough. And let's see the coverage. Maybe something is wrong there. Oh no, it seems I'm covering everything, but now I see what I need to do. So I'm expecting 1 plus 1 to be, I guess, 2. Who knew, right? Let's navigate back to the test and say 2. And now the IDE will compile, have the gopher show up, and say that, yay, all the tests are passing. Pretty nifty. Our another test here is something related to debugger. And you'll see a link here at the top of the page. You can pause the video, have a look at it, or you can try to search for how to find Go routines during debugging. But basically this example here shows you a feature that I particularly love for debugging. Let's say that we run this. As usual, we just start this and it runs and it's a web server, and when I have to look at the traffic here, it's like, okay, it's a mess. I have no idea what these Go routines are doing, and frankly, if I wouldn't see the string here, I wouldn't know this is in the logout page. How can we do this better? Well, we can say edit the configurations or run, and I can say to you here, well, add me the tags equals debugger. Now, this particular thing works only for the third-party library mentioned in the blog post, but in this particular case, if I am invoking debug again and wait for the gopher, I will be able to get a bit more information out of my debugger. Now I can see labels for those Go routines. So this will be particularly useful if my application has a bunch of Go routines and I need to make sense of them. And using that library is as simple as saying debugger set libraries. More information in the blog post I mentioned, so have a look on the link above. And I'm gonna pause here for another few seconds. Second to last tip on the debugger, I'm gonna jump directly to the main test file here. And let me terminate the debugger. It's related to benchmarks. So I love benchmarks. They show pretty numbers and usually they tell me what I need to know, meaning that my application is fast. Of course, I'm going to say fast, not slow, right? So let's run this in the benchmark and see what my application shows here. I can choose the CPU profiler, memory profiler, blocking profiler, or the mutex profiler. So these are all the pprof profilers that they are supported by Go. By default, without me having to install anything, I get a flame graph, which frankly, I have no idea to this day how to use, and I've done many of these presentations, but I don't like flame graphs. So what can you do? Well, you can try and use the search feature and so on, but you can also go to the call tree, which I find it particularly easier to use, or to the method list to see what takes your CPU or memory and so on. And our last tip related to the debugger is the ability for us to use something smart when stepping into our code. Something smart, you say? Well, let's see how this works. I've run the application in the debugger and I've stopped here. Now, if I would say step into, I would step into make demo and then have to step into grid. But I only want to get to grid. So I can invoke smart step into and select grid from the list. And I jumped into grid. Now, the second thing that I see here is that my type is initialized suspectly corresponds to this string here. What this is our debugger's ability to render debug string calls, or better said methods, or string methods, or error methods into a user-friendly format. This happens only if the expression returned by this function is simple enough. So if the debugger can evaluate it internally. This does not rely on Delve's ability to do function calls. That's why it's limited, but it can be very useful. And to see it in action, let me remove this quickly, rerun. Let's jump again, smart step into grid, and you see the main demo. Okay, so this was the last tip that I had to show you for today. I do hope that you enjoyed the presentation, and thank you once again to the organizers for having me here. Thank you for watching this. Let me know if you learned anything new or you'd like to see something similar in the future. And if you have any comments, please let me know either on our official account on Twitter, on my personal account, Gopher's Slack, or in the Slack from...
All right, we are live. How was the talk? And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in both English and Russian. I will do a live translation. You can also ask Florin about like some new features or maybe propose something, and he will be able very like it will be how to say it. You will be grateful for all the suggestions and feedback. That's for sure. Let's see. Yeah, we don't have much questions right now. So yeah, maybe we can just talk a bit and then wait. Maybe people will ask something. Ankur, sure. Do you use GoLand or VS Code or something else?
Yeah, I use. Let me took the opportunity also to thank them for sponsoring our GoLand Bangalore meetup. We refill 2 license every month because of that community license. So that's where means we get a lot of people like, do you have extra license every month? Because we can only refill 2. Do you have extra license? Because I say, okay, next time maybe you can apply for and we can have a lucky draw.
Yeah. So actually, speaking of free licenses, Florin has a few free licenses for the best questions. So maybe that will like push you to ask questions. Okay.
Sure, and I'll be happy to also, have some time to speak with each of you. So feel free to send any direct message you may want, or you've seen the contact details at the end of the presentation to like ping me on either Slack or Twitter. That's all good as well.
Yeah. So Florin, is there some feature you want to implement in GoLand but are not able yet for some reason? Like, for example, is there something missing in Go itself? So you have to like go and propose some patch, some change to Go before you can implement this feature in GoLand.
That's actually a very good question. I don't think we have such a problem at the moment because there are still a lot of things that we would like to implement for Go. So, for example, we just started implementing support for generics. We are still not up to date to the proposal to use the square brackets, for example. And there's still a lot of work for generics in general to be done in our side. And then that opens a lot of other possibilities as well, like other inspections or linters or refactorings. So there's always work to be done. And for example, we are also working on some debugger changes that we plan to release in the future. There's always a constant work. So for the moment, I don't think there's a missing feature in Go that we are waiting for.
Yeah, so probably the first thing they should stop changing brackets, like square brackets, round brackets for generics. Yeah, we have a question. How much time do you spend for research and learn of all these tips and tricks?
So, well, I learned most of them actually before. So I'm using IntelliJ for the better part of the last decade. And some of these that you've seen today, you can actually apply in any of our IDEs. And some of them are Go specific. And because I get to see, or I actually do some of the feature requests for these, like usually I know when they are implemented and how to use. So for a regular user, I would say, try to either see this presentation or there's the tutorials plugin in the editor whenever you start the IDE, and you can use the learn section from there.
Yeah, so actually we have the next question about, will those tips and tricks be added to the learn section, I guess? Yeah, maybe we can just link the presentation from learn section.
That's a good question. The presentation itself actually is working in tandem with the learn feature, because the learn feature is now broken down into several categories, such as refactorings, inspections, and so on and so forth. And there's always going to be what's new in GoLand, let's say 2020.2, which is going to feature like generally what cool features from that release. Whereas this presentation is mostly something that I put together as a list of my favorite tips and tricks, and something that I generally use in my day-to-day coding activity. Happy to adjust the presentation as well. So if you have any favorite tips that you use and you haven't seen them today, write them to me and I'll be happy to include them in the future.
Okay.
Actually, I have one question. Can I ask?
Yeah.
Sure.
Hey, Florin, the Arch Linux version of the GoLand, it always shows that you have exceeded the iNotify file watch will be slow. So
okay.
The Arch Linux. So even though the recommended method is to change the iNotify file system limit to more than that, even though I have changed on my all the system, this notifications always comes into picture in the GoLand. I tried to find the file in the GoLand yours track JetBrains, but could not find it. Do you have any recommendation how we can get away with such?
So for such cases, when generally you encounter a problem with the editor and it misbehaves clearly, you can either ping me or you can go, I'm gonna link the tracker here, and just file an issue, and then my colleagues generally will reply a lot quicker. In this particular case, I don't recall seeing such an issue so far. So perhaps it's an isolated case, or perhaps there's something that our tests don't catch for some reason. So any help to reproduce it would be helpful.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have a better answer for now, but yeah.
No, completely understandable.
Okay, then yeah, thank you. We probably will take a 4 minutes break before we start on the next
Sure.
call. So yeah, thank you
Cool.
again, and Encore, see you in 4 minutes. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
sure.
Thank you so much for having me here today, and I hope you liked it. And if there's any questions, I'll be around here to answer. See you all.